Hello and welcome back to Mystic Motivation. My name is Zoe. I'm an eclectic witch, and today I wanted to talk about what Omnist Paganism is. So I wanted to make this video for a couple of reasons. One, I often get asked myself what exactly my belief system is, and when I say Omnist Pagan, a lot of people either have questions or they've never heard of it, or they might not realize that is exactly how they identify as well. It's just kind of a word that you can put over a very eclectic kind of based view of the world, view of your spiritual practice. But also I make this video to really help others be able to kind of give themselves a label that can help guide them through their journey. It's kind of funny for a while in my journey, I really was kind of put off of labels of any kind. I never really liked to put labels on me in any way, shape, or form. And it really wasn't until recent years that I started to identify myself as a witch, even though I've been doing witchcraft for a while. I didn't really like to label myself as anything, but in recent years, I found this kind of desire to align with labels as a way to kind of deeper connect with my practice and deeper connect with community and people who shared similar views, and to kind of deep dive into more of my interests. So I make this video for that reason as well, that this could possibly help someone, take on or follow a label that could help deepen their practice or connect to more community as well. So let's talk about Omnist Paganism, what they mean separately as words, what they mean together, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey that led me into this path. So let's talk about paganism. So at the root of paganism, it's this deep respect for the natural world. It's this connection to the natural world. Paganism sees the divine in everything, in the trees, the animals, the earth, each other, and even in the seasons, rather than heaven being this thing that's separate from us or far away. There are also different subsects of paganism, such as polytheism, which is where a pagan works with or worships different gods and goddesses, often multiple gods and goddesses. And then another example is pantheism, which is seeing the universe as divine. So again, at the root, paganism is this very natural-based worship or relation to the divine through the natural world. Now, omnism is this philosophical or spiritual position of seeing the divine in all religions and beliefs. Omnism respects different religions and beliefs because omnists believe that there is a kernel of truth within each, but not one holds the ultimate truth. So with there being no set rules, an omnist may relate to many different practices from different belief systems and religions and incorporate it into their own practices. An omnist is open to wisdom from science, witchcraft, paganism, Christianity, Buddhism, from just all different subsects of belief systems. So omnism is characterized by the belief that all spiritual paths are legitimate ways to work with or understand the divine. So now let's talk about what it looks like when we tie the two together. So an omnist pagan, what exactly is the foundation of that? So an omnist pagan would be somebody who works with these very nature-based practices while also maintaining this open-minded philosophy. Omnist pagans tend to be very eclectic, so they may pull from different traditions, from different belief systems, such as different prayer practices, meditation practices, and still they may even work with things like the Wheel of the Year or different gods and goddesses. They do so while still holding the belief and knowing that doing these practices, working with these different symbols, these different gods and goddesses, are just ways to encapsulate the divine and to understand the divine through symbolic means. An omnist pagan may see these as tools of understanding. So paganism is generally non-dogmatic, while omnism is naturally inclusive. So these two tend to blend together beautifully. More people are omnist pagan than they may realize, but having an understanding of what it is can help people kind of find the right path for them, more self-acceptance, or have more of a connection to community with similar views. So with the definitions out of the way, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own omnist pagan practice and kind of how I ended up here. So a lot of the family I grew up with closely was atheist, and they didn't like any kind of religion. They didn't like any kind of higher power belief. And I had this kind of natural defensiveness of that as a kid. I did not believe in any religions, but I was defensive of the divine. So I always knew that I believed in something, that I believed that there was more to this life than like nothingness. Any sort of atheism that has to do with this being kind of, only science-based, as if science doesn't include spirituality. And I knew that that wasn't what I believed, even without having a family that would explore those types of things. So I always knew that about myself, but I didn't really let myself explore it until I was about 18, 19 years old. And I had what I would call my first spiritual awakening, which is such a loaded word these days. I would just say I had my first like major 180 complete turnaround in my perspective of myself, of my life, of the way that I thought, and what I realized, I don't know, this kind of like connection to like, oh, there really is something more to not only like myself, but this world. And that's when I started to try to embark on a spiritual journey, all while not having like attachments to anything along the way. So again, I kind of talked about this at the beginning. I've always been someone that didn't really like labels. I really didn't care about labels. I didn't care how, people labeled me, or I didn't really think it was important to identify myself as really anything specific in any way, shape, or form. I've just always been a curious person. I've always been a very open person, and I've never limited myself to anything. So my spiritual path was very much the same. I just started kind of deep diving into a lot of different areas, and I kept finding things I related to in very different areas as well. So fast forwarding a bit, I eventually came across, omnism, and I really related to it. And as I deepened my witchcraft journey, and, I personally do work with the wheel of the year, and I work with, the seasons and the moon. So I'm very cyclical. And also being a woman, I work with my, I have my menstrual cycle, so I work with that as well. And so I just found myself very rooted in paganism while still holding these omnist beliefs. So that's kind of how I found my way there. I realized like that just very much encapsulated who I was. But I knew like this path it just made sense for me, because my own unique practice, not only do I see everything as like a tool to try to understand this thing that I think is well beyond our comprehension, but also I had certain experiences, and I have had certain experiences throughout my journey that are kind of unexplainable, that as someone, again, that didn't like to overly label things or, allow an experience to kind of really, stick me to one place, I just found that the best thing I could do was just be like, okay, this universe is really unexplainable, and I'm just going to leave it at that, and just see that, this kind of existence is beyond comprehension. So an example to make sense of what I'm saying, it's like, for example, somewhat odd experiences I've had, like when I first connected with and channeled through goddess Aphrodite. I had never worked with a deity before, and I honestly wasn't somebody who really believed in deities. I always had the view of people who, I believe people who have said that they've had experiences with maybe like, Jesus or Buddha or Aphrodite or Hecate, whoever, because I believe that the universe will kind of shape shift itself to our understanding, because I would see that a lot at the beginning of my journey. When I was 18, 19, I had never really heard of a god outside of like the Christian God. So a lot of the signs I was getting because I already had a very open-minded view, it's like the universe was giving me signs through crosses. And I remember like finding like crosses on the ground everywhere all the time. And because the universe knew it could communicate with me in that way without me taking it as like a Christian God sign, but rather just like the only sign I knew of the divine at the time, it would like work that way with me, if that makes sense. And so I always like had this understanding that like the universe will meet you where you're at and will communicate with you in a way that you understand. And so I just believed that for a very long time. And it wasn't until when I started working with goddess Aphrodite, and I had this really weird experience, and I've talked about this before, where I was in like a moment of spiritual practice, and I just long story short, I felt this like surge of energy go up into my head. It was really euphoric for a second before it kind of snapped me out of it, because it scared me a bit. And the only word in my head after that was Aphrodite. So I was like, okay, like let me just like pray to Aphrodite. I'm curious enough to do it. And I remember I took a shower and I was just talking to her, and I was like, give me a sign of one of your correspondences. Like, show me a pearl, show me a bee, show me a dolphin. just whatever you can show me. And so as soon as I got out, and I had already set up an altar for her that day, because like if I'm gonna try to connect with something, I'm gonna like really try to connect with it. So I had already set up like this very tiny altar in my bedroom with stuffed correspondences of her. Like I had like some rose petals there, mirrors, just kind of like things that related to love and beauty. And when I got out of the shower and I looked over there, there was a bumblebee sitting on the window right above it. So if it's like the altar's here, for those of you watching, the bee was right above it, and it sat there for hours. And in all the years I've lived at this place, I've never noticed and I've never seen like a bee come onto my porch, because my porch is kind of set back, and like just sit on the window like that. And that's one of her correspondences. So that, and just like a lot of other like clear communications of things coming through, that really made me question once again, like, what is possible for the universe? Are these kind of encapsulated higher beings actually a potential? And that kind of led a lot into, my witchcraft journey really started a lot the deeper I got interested in archetypes. And so that really led me into understanding like that energy kind of can be encapsulated and worked with. And then I thought, okay, so if a lot of us are working with things like Goddess Aphrodite, who's to say she wasn't already, or isn't now, our words making sense here, isn't now encapsulated because of how many people refer to her, believe in her, work with her. Like, I just began to identify within myself that like I didn't need to know the answer. I could just see the divine as like much more expansive than I can believe. So if this is making sense at all, I just realized that like my experiences that I've had that have really kind of been very unexplainable, I've allowed to fall into my omnist pagan practice, where it's like, I believe the divine is many things. I believe the divine is huge. I believe that this existence and nature and everything we look at, me and you, like everything is spiritual. And so who's to say what's possible on the other side, when we're unleashed from these encapsulated forms ourselves. So that's kind of my own journey to omnist paganism. It's just like, it allows me to be curious, and it also allows me to relate to many different things. Like, as you can see behind me, I have my Aphrodite altar in here now. On the other side of me, I have this giant Buddha painting. So I've also always really connected with and resonated with aspects of Buddhism. I also have on my wall next to me over here, like a couple of different rosaries and things like that. I have some Hindu god statues. Like, I really don't limit my desire and my curiosity to work with different things. And I found in like my exploration of so many different religions and beliefs to be so many kernels of truth. And it seems like it's just the same source, just dressed up in a different costume, dressed up in a different story. And a lot of my spiritual practice, at the beginning, I was absolutely I just really adored Ram Dass and his teachings and like his way to understanding like the divine. And I also incorporated a lot of that into my practice, this very like, again, this like understanding of like things being very cyclical, and like things being just like, there's these different layers of awareness that we can get to if we allow ourselves to be curious, and if we can allow ourselves to burn away old identities that limit us from doing so, and burn away these attachments that limit us from being, curious about the divine, curious about our abilities, And I would say my practice is a lot different than someone like Ram Dass. I do identify as a witch. I do witchcraft. I do work with a deity. And I do believe in spirit guides. I do believe in ancestors. And I think that I've allowed myself to do so without having to overly like understand it. It's just allowing myself to live through experience and be like, okay, I experienced that. I experienced this thing that's kind of hard to explain. And I'm not going to, just because I connect to Aphrodite doesn't mean I have to be a solely polytheistic pagan, right? I can allow myself to still have these very just broad views of everything, and just not limit myself to what's possible. So I kind of rambled there, but I just really wanted to explain it well in the sense of like, I think you can still believe in specific things at the same time that you understand that you may just be working with them to your understanding. At the same time, that is also a possibility that it could be as, encapsulated as it seems to be. But ultimately, Omnist Paganism, if you're curious about it yourself, if you relate to it in any way, shape, or form, it can look however you want it to look. You can still work with deities. You can still work with a specific god or goddess. You can not do those things. You could also be an atheist omnist pagan. You can work with the natural world. You could believe that people are trying to just understand the world around them in symbolic means, and you can really just shape it however you want. There's no limit to that. It's just having this open-minded kind of view tied in with kind of this natural relation to the world around you. So that's a very broad, open-minded practice and belief. So as an eclectic witch, like, this path just made sense for me. I pull from, a lot of different areas, and I like to be curious, and I like to not deny anything. And I think that a lot of witches who also see themselves, or any pagan or person that's very open-minded, can see a lot of themselves in this belief system and can find a lot of like-minded community in this belief system. It's not necessary to share beliefs to be friends with people, to be close with people, but it can be helpful. Just like how, I love to read books, therefore, like, I have little separate book talk on TikTok that I go to because I like to connect with that community. So it's that same natural desire you get where you want to talk to other people who are also kind of in the same area. It's not like it's exclusive to just that, but you're allowed to have that kind of desire to connect with people who share similar interests. So that was a lot of my motivation to make this video. Is a lot more people might connect to Omnist Paganism than they may realize, and it can open a lot of doors for you to where you don't have to overly analyze a lot of the experiences you've had, and instead you can just accept a lot of things and just allow that to move you through your journey with more fluidity, more acceptance, more understanding, and more of like this confidence. I feel like this path really gave me a lot of confidence in being like unafraid to explore the magical, which I say because I wrote that on a post-it note a couple weeks ago, and I put that on my wall. It says, "You must not be afraid to explore the magical." And I think a lot of people who hold to religions who may not be super open-minded, they fear knowledge, they fear curiosity, because their religion may teach them that to question is to be tempted by something evil. And this path has really allowed me to be like, I can accept a lot of things and be curious, and it's done quite the opposite. It's been really empowering. I found a lot of myself in it. I found a lot of confidence in it, and I found a lot of community in it as well. So I'll leave my ramble here for now. If you have any questions about Omnist Paganism, let me know. I would be happy to answer them. And if you are looking for a more eclectic-based community, I do have an online coven. This is a space for all levels and layers of witches. So not just witches that are Omnist Pagan. This is full of witches that hold to all different kinds of belief systems and practices, but we all come together to share our wisdom, which is really cool. So we have those who are just curious about witchcraft in there, as well as beginners to more advanced practitioners. So it's a space that is not in any way, shape, or form going to hold you to believing one way or being one way. My whole purpose of creating this online coven is having a space where people feel comfortable and included, where you can ask questions and learn about different subsects of magic from kind of a non-biased view, which I feel like as an Omnist Pagan eclectic witch, I felt like I was kind of the perfect candidate to create that, because like I'm just curious about different things, so I have fun facilitating these covens and talking about different things without being like super biased about anything, or I try not to be. And when you join the coven, not only do you get to join these like monthly virtual covens we do, but you also gain access to this library on your portal page that's full of different workbooks, videos, meditations that I've created to assist you in your witchcraft journey. You may find things that align with your specific beliefs, or you can do what I do and just deep dive into different topics that you may not necessarily fully align to, but you're curious about and you like learning about, and you can take away from it what resonates with you and leave the rest. So it's just this really cool eclectic space. You also gain access to our group chat and Discord. You get exclusive member discounts and tools. 10% of your membership is donated to a monthly charity as well, because we want to perpetuate that growth, perpetuate that, openness and open-minded care towards others. And it's just a really special space. So I'll put more about it down in the caption below. And if you want to explore and join yourself, you can go to the link in bio and just click the Covens tab. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and to subscribe to Mystic Motivation so you can stay up to date on future videos. And I'll see you back here soon. Much love, witches.